FM presents the new Open Mic Show with Bill Masek. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900.
And here we go again, Bill and Bill.
Hey, Will, how are you tonight?
Good, on the new Open Mic Show.
You know, we get big news tonight about cakes.
Cakes?
We have a cake to give away for
we
our
do.
birthday, and plus the cake was in the Supreme Court today.
And we're getting into a new month for birthdays and anniversaries. So if somebody has a birthday or anniversary in the month of
July. My birthday's in July. Am I eligible?
I don't know. You have to check with the boss on that one.
Oh, jeez.
They might have a conflict. Probably not. I'd say you're not able to do that.
Well, what we'll do is we'll make it impartial. We'll let Chris, the producer of the show, pick out the winning name. And Chris, if you pick out my name, I'll split the cake with
now,
you.
cut that out.
That's not legal?
This is where you're crossing lines here.
See, Bill, what your problem is, you're too
I'm
involved
I'm too honest. I
No,
guess.
you're too involved in politics, and you think everything is on the down low.
Oh, boy.
But it is. It's not. It's
Well,
on
let's
the
talk
up and
about
up.
the show tonight and
All right, go
not
ahead.
your insinuations. All right. We are having a very special guest tonight. Jack Lynch will be with us in just a few minutes. We're going to be talking about the new inductee to the Haverhill. Why can't I think of what it's called? The
Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame. Yeah, because I'll never be in one, so I don't really think about
You may
it.
get there someday.
Yeah.
If you do something spectacular, other than leading the mundane life that you have now,
Oh, jeez.
then you may
See,
be able to make it
another
there.
shot at me.
Well, you're giving me shots
All right.
about being crooked and so forth.
No, he wasn't.
But there's some great names on
Yeah,
here. I mean,
yes.
we'll go through it when
We'll go through that when we have our guest in here,
gentleman comes
Jack
on.
Lynch from the Haverhill Hall of Fame. And also, we have a new inductee that we're going to be talking about tonight. And we also have some last chance, at least as far as winning, getting them off the new Open Mic Show. Haverhill Police All-Stars versus the All-Pro Patriots Celebrity Softball Team at Haverhill Stadium. That's going to be on Sunday at 1 o'clock, June 10th. So it looks like it's going to be a good weekend.
I actually watched on YouTube. Babe Ruth supposedly played his last game ever in Haverhill. You ever hear that story?
I don't know. No, I don't remember that.
Yeah, I'll get you
But why don't you
the link.
figure it out? Yeah.
I will do that.
Okay. And so if somebody wants these tickets, I've got 6 of them here. So if somebody would like to bring their whole family, and
What's the number they would call?
they would call 978-374-1900. That's also the number to call in your birthday or your anniversary for the to maybe we'll put all the names into the cowboy hat, and then we'll draw out a winner. And that's about it. So let's anything else you want to say, or we're going to get right to our guest?
Well, let's talk about the Supreme Court today. The vote 7-2 vote where the
I don't want to talk about that. I want to get our guest on.
you want to bring him on?
Yeah, I think that's important. We have a busy show tonight.
We do have a lot going
Yeah,
on.
a lot going
and
on.
you know what's funny though? As busy as it is,
Yeah.
you're only working part time tonight.
I have to leave because I'm going to an important city council budget session. So I'm elected to serve the people, and I'll give up part of my pay tonight just so I can go serve the people.
God bless you.
Yeah,
You
I
sound like
really-
Abraham Lincoln.
I enjoy being on the city council. So
Well, you'd be like
and
Trump.
I
Trump
wanna
doesn't
make
even
sure
take a paycheck.
Make sure I do my job. Yep.
Well, we want
All
you
right.
to do it too because you've been doing it well for 24 years.
Yep, that's right. Yep.
Oh.
No, 20. This is 23. I'm guaranteed 24.
Well, hopefully you'll make it that far.
Yeah, and many more. I
Yes.
love it. Okay, anyway, we're going to pause right now for the cause, and we'll be right back, and our guest will be here. Jack Lynch speaking about the Haverhill Hall of Fame on WHAV 97.9 FM.
Open mic!
Bill Masek and the new Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900. If you're enjoying this program, consider becoming a WHAV member right now. Just click on the membership tab at WHAV.net.
Catch the wave!
Hi, Tom Bergeron here. I started at WHAV in 1972. And look, WHAV's still here, but it won't be if you don't help support it. Go to WHAV.net. Become a contributor. Keep us going.
Community Spotlight is sponsored by Unicare Life and Health Insurance Company.
Community Spotlight.
Northern Essex Community College invites Merrimack Valley children and teens to take part in the 20th anniversary session of the school's College for Kids program, which will merge this year with the NECC STEM Academy. For 4 weeks, starting in July, students in grades 2 through 10 can learn and explore all things science, technology, engineering, and math, in addition to the College for Kids mainstay physical activity and arts program. To register or for more information, contact Alicia at 978-556-3332. Someone you know is on WHAV. To submit or read your own nonprofit announcements, click on the Contact tab at whav.net or email news@whav.net. In the Edwin V. Johnson newsroom, this is Robin Fancher.
Support for WHAV is brought to you by Unicare Life and Health Insurance Company. For nearly 30 years, Unicare has provided health benefits to people insured through the Group Insurance Commission. Unicare is proud to be serving over 170,000 GIC members, retirees, and their families.
Those Boston stations don't always understand weather in the Merrimack Valley. Stay informed with Wave Weather every 30 minutes, 24 hours a day on Soft Gold, WHAV.
WHAV Open Mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, 97.9 WHAV FM presents the new Open Mic Show with Bill Masek. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900.
And we are back. Bill Masek here, along with my co-host Bill Ellis and our special guest Jack Lynch. And Jack, welcome to the Open Mic Show.
Thank you.
Great. You're here because you are involved with the Haverhill Hall of Fame, and you have a new inductee coming up.
Yes, we are going to induct Harriet Atwood Newell on Saturday, June 9th at 2 o'clock at the First Church of Christ in Bradford.
And is this an event that is open to the public?
Yes,
It is.
It's open to the public. There's no admission charge. Just be there at 2 o'clock in the White Church in near Bradford Common.
Right. It's a beautiful church.
Yes.
Yes.
It's
Now, how many years have you been involved with the board and getting involved with that?
I've only been a member for 3 years, in fact.
Okay.
I was elected here in a meeting in the WHAV office.
Okay, but it's a real interesting list of people, and the people that get inducted are always very qualified and interesting, I find. We do have a call just to break in. One of the things we do here is we take birthday and anniversary calls. So if you don't mind, we'll take one of those and we'll get right back to your topic. Okay, Chris, bring up our telephone caller. Hello, telephone caller.
I am the telephone caller.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine.
Good.
And I have the first July birthday of the month.
First, you do. That's correct. You have the first July birthday. Who is that person?
That person is Jackie.
Jackie, okay. And birthday, right?
Yep.
Okay, did you give the information to Chris before you got on the line?
Yep, Chris has it.
Chris is shaking his head, so I think we're all set. We're going to get back to our guest, but thank you for calling in.
Okay.
Okay. And if you want to call in and have any questions for either one of our guests later on, do so. Thanks a lot.
I didn't quite catch what the topic.
Well, we're going to be talking about the new inductee and also some of the people that are already in the Haverhill Hall of Fame.
Do you want to give the caller a chance to double the prizes?
No, we don't have time for that tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll let you go.
All right. Okay.
And
All right.
I'll be listening.
Thank you very much. Okay. So back to Jack Lynch now from the Haverhill Hall of Fame. Jack, some of the people on this list are very interesting and very famous, so the people that have come from Haverhill. So do you have any... we'll start right with our poet and abolitionist, John Greenleaf Whittier. Do you have anything to say about any of these people or anything you'd like to add? I mean, we also have Hannah Dustin on here, and she's a member.
Yes.
The founder of Macy's shopping empire, Roland. I never really knew his name. R.H. Macy. Roland H. Macy.
Yes, his first store was actually on Merrimack Street in 1851, and he had several locations in Haverhill. They all didn't do too well. He stayed here till about 1858. Then he went west for a little bit, and after that, he made it big in New York City. So
Yes, he certainly has.
Now, when did they set up in New York City?
I believe in 1868 or so.
Interesting.
I'm not
So there was
sure
a big,
of that.
right after the Civil War. I mean, there was probably an era of good feeling, and it probably, business took off for him down there. And thus, he must have, because he had the parade.
That's right. He
Yeah.
still has the parade.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. They claim the first Macy's parade was in Haverhill. He came up with that as a marketing
No kidding.
gimmick right down Merrimack Street. I don't think they had any helium-filled balloons or Mickey Mouse stuff. but-
Yeah, but there's so many things that have started in Haverhill. People that have come from Haverhill. It's really interesting. People don't really probably think much about all of the people that have come from Haverhill and grown and gone on to bigger and better.
There's one name on here that I'm very familiar with is Frankie Fontaine
That's right, the comedian.
from the Jackie Gleason show.
That's right, Crazy
Yes,
Guggenheim.
Crazy Guggenheim. I'm working to, there's a little handbook that we have on Hall of Fame members, and I'm working to revise it. And one thing I learned when I was doing some research on that Frankie Fontaine's Crazy Guggenheim character is considered the model on the Simpsons cartoon show there. Homer's friend from Moe's
Yeah,
Tavern there.
yeah.
I think his name is Ralph or something.
Yeah.
The
He's
writers,
modeled after-
the writers said they modeled him that
After
character
Frankie.
after Frankie Fontaine, who really got his start in the high spots of Lafayette Square.
Yeah, the high spots of Lafayette Square.
Now, do you know offhand how Frankie Fontaine ended up being with Jackie Gleason?
No, I don't. He was. I think he had nightclub acts and stuff like that. I don't know how he first got his opening on the show.
Because that must have been huge for his career. I mean, but back then to be on TV. What would we have, a handful of channels back then, and to be able to have a piece of, a time on a Saturday night, when Jackie Gleason had his show, and that was probably down in Miami, I think. Didn't that show?
Yes, I think.
emanate
Yeah.
from down there.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right.
Actually, I didn't realize he was also fairly well known as a singer. He had quite a few hit albums in the early 60s, very deep. He had a very deep baritone voice. I've heard some
No kidding.
examples of him singing. But
He was like Jim Neighbors then.
Yeah, because actually his voice is the Crazy Guggenheim.
It's pretty high.
He'd manage to twist his face around, and the cap would be sideways, and he didn't sound like a baritone back then. He
No.
had that crazy way about him.
Right, right. How about the movie mogul, Louis B. Mayer from Haverhill?
yes, well, he was born in Russia, and went to his family. Went to Nova Scotia, and they were in the junk business, and they moved to Boston, and he worked with his father in the junk business, and he saw a notice that a theater in Haverhill was for sale, and it was a rundown old burlesque house on Essex Street, right about where the photo
Yes,
factory
yeah,
is now.
yeah.
In that area, it was known to. It lasted until the early 50s, known as the Lafayette, but he bought it. It was known as the Gem, but it was such a rundown place that supposedly Haverhill people called it the Germ instead of the Gem. So he bought it, fixed it up, and opened it in 1907, and rechristened it the Orpheum. And he tried to deflect its old reputation by showing religious-oriented pictures and stuff like
Okay,
that.
yeah.
And a few years later, he built the Colonial, I think in 1911.
Yeah.
Many people remember next to the the old Haverhill National Bank. Of
Yeah,
course,
I actually remember that one. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
bank wasn't there when it
Right,
first opened. The
right.
bank came about 1915 or so, and then
And on the other side was Peter's Sweet Shop.
Peter's Sweet Shop, yes.
Also enjoyed that place.
Now, how did he get connected up with MGM, the Metro Goldwyn Mayer? When did that come about?
He stayed in Haverhill till 1915 or so, and then he hooked up with another Boston theater, and they bought a string of theaters. And in the 20s, he went out to Hollywood, and of course Hollywood was just starting in those days anyway. And he actually founded his own company, and the others really hooked up with him, and he became Metro Gold. I think it's Samuel Goldwyn.
Samuel Goldwyn, yeah.
I forget who else, but he was the big, the power behind MGM, and they formed that in the late 20s, just when talking pictures were taking off, and he instituted he was credited with instituting the star system, where actors were tied to one studio, and it was pretty hard for them to make a film for Paramount or 20th Century Fox or something like that.
Right, they actually signed to the studio, and they made a lot of film though. I mean, they kept
churned.
them working.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
the movie producers were also own theaters, so they were supplying their own theaters with these particular movies.
Yes. Yes.
Now, quick question for you, a little trivia question. Everybody knows that the lion was MGM symbol. And what was the first year that the MGM symbol actually roared?
Well, it would have to be in about 1928 or so. when they
Exactly,
had the-
1928 is correct.
When they had the
Yeah,
talkies.
talkies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
Who were some of the, offhand, some of the big actors back then that Louis Mayer had working for him? Like a Harold Lloyd or something like that, or?
I don't know about Harold Lloyd, but he had Judy Garland and Clark Gable, and I'm not sure of which ones. I know Judy Garland for a fact.
Yeah.
He was tied to her with in Gone with the Wind and other pictures.
The Wizard of Oz?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gone with the Wind. Yeah, Wizard of Oz.
So tell
Both big hits in
Not Gone with
1939.
the Wind.
You know, I'd like to talk a little bit about the new inductee, but let's just take a short break here and let people know that we're talking to Jack Lynch from the Haverhill Hall of Fame, and we'll get some more details on that. And there is going to be a open to the public presentation on June 9th. That's coming right up, 2 p.m. at the First Church of Christ in Bradford, right at the Bradford Common, the big white church. And very interesting stuff, the Haverhill Hall of Fame. We'll talk more about it right here on the new open mic on WHAV 97.9 FM.
Open mic.
Bill Masek and the new open mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900. If you're enjoying this program, consider becoming a WHAV member right now. Just click on the membership tab at whav.net.
It's 6:27.
Catch the wave.
Would it surprise you to know radio still reaches more than 90% of people in every age group every week? It's a fact. And 97.9 WHAV FM's target audience averages 92%. While other media are cutting back, area residents turn to WHAV for local news, information, and entertainment they cannot find elsewhere. Add what has been called the halo effect of public radio, and listeners find business messages more credible and trustworthy than other forms of advertising. For a no-obligation assessment about how WHAV can help your business reach more people than all other local media combined, call 978-374-1900 or visit whav.net.
Wave weather.
Here's the wave weather forecast for Haverhill and the Merrimack Valley. For tonight, mostly cloudy with a chance of scattered showers. Fog is possible, low 48, light north winds. Tuesday, increasing cloudiness with a chance of scattered afternoon showers and isolated thunderstorms, high 67, low 48. And the outlook for Wednesday, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon, high 64, low around 50. I'm WHAV meteorologist Jim Vaughn. Your next wave weather in 30 minutes.
If you want to know what's going on at WHAV, sign up for the free monthly Wavelengths newsletter online at WHAV.net.
Catch the wave. WHAV. Open mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, 97.9 WHAV FM presents the new Open Mic Show with Bill Masek. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900.
We are back on the new Open Mic. I'm Bill Masek, and also my co-host Bill Ellis is here. And we're speaking with Jack Lynch from the Haverhill Hall of Fame. Some very interesting information, if you're just tuning in, is what we're discussing about people that were from Haverhill, but then they went big. They went either did something of notoriety in the state or the nation, right, or even bigger.
Yes, they had to do it on, as our bylaws say, a significant contribution beyond Haverhill's borders.
Interesting. Okay.
You can't just be a multi-term city councilor, no offense.
Okay. No. All right. Well, you know what? I owned radio stations in New England, all over New England.
Oh, Bill.
So anyway, but I got to be dead.
And, yeah,
you also said that, so I'm in no hurry to even.
But
maybe I'll write my pitch out and leave it with my will.
Upon his demise, though, Tom Bergeron would probably be a candidate.
Well,
he might be. Yeah.
I don't want to give away my speech for Saturday, but that was going to be one of my lines that people like Tom. People sometimes ask me, why isn't Tom Bergeron or even Rob Zombie or somebody like that in the Hall of Fame? Well, nobody's in any rush to get in it.
Right.
Well,
That's right.
Who determines who gets in?
We have a committee. There's a committee that, of course, I'm a member of. I'm not a member of the Hall of Fame, obviously, but we have a committee of 9. We could have up to 11 members, but there's currently 9 members that we meet periodically. People suggest anybody can send in a nomination, but what we see, we kind of have a standing list of people who have been considered over in the past that haven't quite made the grade. So some of those are relevant, but sometimes we get suggestions from the public.
Sure.
So anybody can nominate someone, and we discuss them sometimes at length, and we try to find out more information. What was their Haverhill connection? Were they born here? Where did they live? Where did they live when they were here? Did they go to high school here?
You have to make that connection.
Yeah,
to the
sometimes we
city.
just say, well, how about John Doe? Well, where did they live? And then we find out, we look back through records, we find out that their family lived in Haverhill, and they might have graduated from Haverhill High School in such and such a year. So that kind of gives them a substantive connection.
When did the Hall of Fame start? 1985?
Started in 1985.
And how did the name Harriet Atwood Newell come to the forefront?
Well, she had been considered in the past, and for some reason she wasn't elected, but her friend, there's Anne Hazeltine Judson, who was also one of the first missionaries, foreign missionaries, and Anne Hazeltine Judson was a good friend of Harriet's. They went to Bradford Academy together. They married missionaries, newly ordained missionaries, and a few days later they shipped out of Salem to India. And so for some reason, Harriet Atwood Newell wasn't considered worthy at the time, and Anne Hazeltine Judson was inducted in one of the first classes back in the late 80s. So I personally considered that somewhat, not an injustice, but an oversight. To me, Harriet Atwood Newell became the more famous of the two, not that they were in any competition. She didn't convert anyone. I should get into her life a little. I haven't really said much. They went to India. They arrived there on the same day in 1812, June of 1812, when the United States declared war on Great Britain. So India was more or less under the control of the British East India Company at the time. So obviously they couldn't have learned, because of the communications in those days, they wouldn't have known about the declaration of war. But trouble had been brewing for quite some time.
Okay, yeah.
So the British East India Company was tolerant. They didn't really like missionaries stirring up the natives, but they tolerated. There were some British missionaries that had been there for some time, but when they found out there were American missionaries, they no,
didn't want that.
You're out in the next boat.
Yeah.
So
She died shortly after arrival.
she well, not in India. They kicked her out of India. She was expelled. There was a boat leaving in port, and it was going to the island of Mauritius, which is down in the southwest Indian Ocean off Madagascar. It's about 3,500 miles from Calcutta, where they landed. So there were only 2 berths available on this ship. So Harriet and her husband, Samuel Newell, took it because she was pregnant by this time, and it was supposed to be like a 6-week voyage to Mauritius, and it ended up there were storms and leaking vessels. They had to put into port for repairs for a few weeks, and then they embarked again, and it took 3 months to get there. In the way en route, she gave birth prematurely to an infant daughter, and during a storm, the baby took ill and died a few days later. So she was consigned to a watery grave, and then a few weeks later, they were still going through on the ocean, and Harriet, they noticed that she had some symptoms of consumption, what we call tuberculosis. Now Harriet was familiar with the symptoms because her father had died from it a few years earlier, and so her condition continued to worsen. They finally arrived in Mauritius in October 31st, 1812, and there were doctors there. Mauritius was a colony of the British by then, but not under the East India Company. It was the British government. They had just conquered it from France a couple of years earlier. So her condition worsened, and she died in about a month later, November 30th, and she was buried in Mauritius with her husband as the only mourner. The other missionaries were kicked out shortly thereafter. Ann Hazelton Judson and her husband, Adoniram Judson, arrived in Mauritius in the middle of January, and of course they didn't know of her death until they got there. And they went on to they went to Burma, which wasn't under British rule at the time.
Yeah.
And they had a more or less successful missionary career. But Harriet never converted a soul. And
now, did her husband make it back to the United States?
No, her husband, I don't believe he ever returned to the United States. After her death, he went to Ceylon, what they called Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka, an island off the southeast coast of India, and he spent a year there. Several other of the missionaries that were ordained with him, he found out had established residence in Bombay, which is on the other side of India, over towards what's now Pakistan. So he went there, and he served there as a missionary. They established a semi-successful mission, he and the 2 other.
Very interesting. Now, where do you get this research? Did they write diaries and they're available?
Yeah, that's really what makes Harriet, I think,
it's so
the eligible member.
There's so many details.
She wrote. She was a prolific letter writer and diary. She kept a diary. After she died, her husband gathered all her letters and diary and shipped it back to the minister at the Andover Theological Seminary, whom he had studied under, and he published, he gathered them all together, published them a few years later, and it became an instant hit. The Trials of a missionary wife, and she was considered a martyr. The book became a bestseller. If you had bestsellers in the 1815s, and it was new editions were published every year.
Quite a story. Hey, we have a call, Jack. Would you take a call? We have a caller on the line. Hello, caller. How are you?
Yeah, Bill, I wanted to call you. This is Dr. Boucher. I wanted to call you before I went to my meeting. I wanted to mention a couple of points. I say hi to your guest, and I compliment him for everything he's doing.
Thank
But I want to bring a couple of points up. One is the Merrimack Valley Transit Authority. I'd like to say to your listeners to support the bill, $88 million for transportation.
Yeah, I'm working on that, and I know there's a lot of effort being put in on that, but we're really trying to stick to topic. Doctor, is there anything you want to say to our guest, Jack Lynch?
Yeah, what's the subject? I didn't get the beginning.
Subject is the Haverhill Hall of Fame. And there's a
Fame.
new inductee, Harriet Atwood Newell, and we're talking about her life and what she did outside of Haverhill, and just a very interesting story that Jack has told about her. I don't know if you caught any of it.
Yeah, I don't know that much about it, but it is very interesting.
Okay.
And I compliment him for everything he's doing.
Yeah, it's an incredible story he tells, and I'll tell you, he doesn't have notes here. He's doing it all from memory. So
this is not a good time to mention about the MVRTA budget?
well, we've already done that, and we'll be speaking about that. I have it on the agenda for tomorrow night.
Oh, thank you.
So we're working on it. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and we just hope it's not a train coming at us.
I'm going to be there with the person that might pick me up.
Okay, great. Thanks
All
for
right, then,
thanks
Bill.
for calling
Thank
in,
you.
Doctor.
Thank you.
Okay,
Guests
all
and
right.
everything else.
Thank you. All right, have a good night.
You too.
Okay.
Now Mauritius actually recognized Harriet Newell back in 2012.
Yes, that's one of the things I used to push her candidacy. That her book became such an inspiration. Many future Christian missionaries used her as example. Numerous people named her their children, their daughters, Harriet Atwood Newell or some variation thereof. And when she, after 200 years, when most people are long forgotten, a professor at the University of Mauritius and the director of the Biblical Society of Mauritius had a ceremony on November 30th, 2012, which was the 200th anniversary of her death. And I found a newspaper article and pictures of this ceremony. They did some speeches and laid some floral tributes there. And the representative from the U.S. the American Embassy, Mauritius is an independent country now.
Right.
So the U.S. Embassy sent a delegate there. So they had quite a ceremony, which is, and she wasn't forgotten.
I guess not. Very interesting. And she is the one so did you actually make the nomination for her to be inducted?
Yes.
Yes.
I did.
Harriet Atwood Newell.
How about descendants?
Her only child was the baby, so that died at sea, so she had no direct descendants, but she is related. One of the people that's helping us from the First Church of Christ is Baron Tenney, who's their historian, and he is related to her mother. Harriet's mother's maiden name was Tenney, which is a name long connected with the early settlement of Bradford.
Yeah.
So he's related to her, and I believe that Mr. Atwood from Atwood Memorial
No
over
kidding.
in Ward Hill is a relative, and Donald Atwood, who was the former Deputy Secretary of Defense under the Bush, under first George Bush, under Dick Cheney. He's also a member of the Haverhill Hall of Fame. He is related to her too, so I imagine a lot of the Atwoods in Haverhill are related.
So good bloodline. We'll just put it that way.
Well, her father was a well-known merchant in the late 18th century. Her house actually was where the old annex was in the
burnt down.
the annex.
Sure. Right
on Crescent Place.
Yeah.
It's now going to be it's now the parking lot for the new Domino's, but that's,
you're
that's
probably,
progress.
Yeah, you're right. I think you're right. Yeah.
We have a call, Bill.
All right, we have a call. You know what? Can we just let's hold on the call just because I think it's time that we take a break before we take a call. And this is the new open mic. We are discussing this hour the Haverhill Hall of Fame, a new inductee coming in this Saturday. And Jack Lynch is our guest from the Haverhill Hall of Fame. If you have something you would like to call or ask, you can call us at 978-374-1900. We have one call on hold, but we have room for more. Call us, and we'll be right back on the new open mic right here on WHAV 97.9 FM.
Open mic.
Bill Masek and the new open mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900. If you're enjoying this program, consider becoming a WHAV member right now. Just click on the membership tab at WHAV.net.
Broadcasting on the Armstrong FM system, this is 97.9 FM WHAV.
That we deliberate and achieve with wisdom and understanding, recognizing the rights of all of our citizens with full regard for the dignity and justice of the individual.
Each week, WHAV News brings you live gavel-to-gavel coverage of the Haverhill City Council. Listen to 97.9 WHAV FM each Tuesday night at 7 when the City Council is in session from the Theodore A. Pelosi Jr. City Council Chambers in City Hall. As a public service, Haverhill City Council coverage is sponsored in part by Dole, Childs, and Shaw Funeral Home.
WHAV Open Mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, 97.9 WHAV FM presents the new Open Mic Show with Bill Masek. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900.
And we're into the final turn here on the new open mic with Jack Lynch of the Haverhill Hall of Fame. And we do have a call, so if you don't mind, Jack, let's just jump right to that call and see what's on that person's mind. Hello, caller.
Good evening, Bill.
Hi, Jerry.
Besides, Bill Masek being the famous Haverhillite.
Yeah, but I'm not dead, so
have,
they can't consider
Mr.
me.
Crockett, we can't forget James Crockett, right?
He is a member.
Crockett's victory card.
Yes, he was
Every
elected.
Every springtime, I dust off the book, and I start to read it again and read when I should be putting in my tomato plants and lettuce and things like that. So, yeah, he wrote a lot of books and used to listen to him on the radio. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes, he's a member. Harriet will be the 39th member. So we only mentioned a half a dozen, but Crockett was inducted quite some time
But if somebody
ago.
wants to see the Hall of Fame display, they can go to the Haverhill Public Library.
Yes, and just if you come in.
Again, Bill Masek is going to be my most favorite.
Well, Jerry, I've got to do something. I got to break out of Haverhill, but I got time. I still got a lot of time. Maybe I'll write a book or who knows. I'll have to work on something that'll get me notoriety beyond Haverhill.
Bill, just keep doing what you're doing, and you'll be in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
I know you will.
Thanks, Jerry. Okay, we're gonna get back to our
Sure,
guest.
I understand.
Thanks for calling. All right.
Thank
Now,
you.
Enjoy.
Jack, was Ann Judson's husband or Harriet Newell's husband from Haverhill?
No, Adoniram Judson, who became the most famous of them all, was actually born in Malden, and Samuel Newell, Harriet's husband, was born in Durham, Maine. They both studied at the Andover Theological Seminary, which was on the campus of Phillips Academy.
Interesting.
So, some of the other people that we haven't mentioned yet include Dr. Frank Leahy from Leahy Clinic, and because I go to the Leahy Clinic, I am very appreciative of what he accomplished for medicine.
Yes, of course, when he founded it, it was in the Kenmore Square area of Boston.
Right. But-
Our little biography says he moved it to Burlington, but that didn't happen.
But
till
he
well
didn't
after
really
his
move it.
death,
Okay,
no.
all right, well,
He died in like
But-
1950. I'm going to have to look this one
all
up.
right, that's okay. Next time in, we'll quiz you on that. We don't want
53.
50.
And
Okay.
it moved in 78 or 80, I think.
Okay.
It's something that a lot of kids grew up with. Bob Montana's work.
Bob Montana, yes, he was actually a high school classmate of two other members of our Hall of Fame. He didn't graduate from Haverhill High. He spent his last year at Manchester Central, but he went 3 years there. He was a classmate of my mother's, too, in the class of 40. Donald Atwood, who I mentioned earlier, was class of 40. Ray Tye, who was a great philanthropist in the Boston area, was class of 40 also, but Bob Montana was... in fact, my mother had one of those high school autograph books, and she has
Yeah.
all three of their signatures in a little cartoon that
No
Bob
kidding.
Montana
Wow.
drew for her.
Now, did Bob Montana show signs of being an artist when, or caricatures, drawing when he was in high school? Does your mother remember any of that?
Yes, his book. He did a lot of work. He worked on the Brown and Gold, so he did some cartoon work for them. And for many years, I never saw the thing myself, but they said the old high school, he left a drawing on one of the blackboards there, and it was preserved for many years, and they don't know what became of it. They
Some
don't know
janitor
Came in to clean up?
clean with the wet sponge.
Do not erase. This is the cure to cancer or something.
Yeah. I actually am friends with a great guy, Jeff Linehan. His father was
Skinny.
Jughead.
Yes.
Depicted as Jughead.
Yeah, I remember the father. I worked at Hammer Leather when
Did
I was
you?
a
Yeah.
kid, and he worked. They called him Skinny Linehan. Richard, I think it was.
Yeah.
He worked at Hammer Leather too. I remember him.
So the Archie comic characters were based on people from this area?
Yeah, from Haverhill.
Many of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some were composites. The only really two that are I think are not too many people deny were Jughead and Moose, who was a man named I think it's Arnold Daggett.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's all interesting. So, I think Haverhill has a lot to be proud of. So hopefully that will continue with people from Haverhill kind of making it big in one way or another.
Yeah, we have several other inductees that are going to be
Considered, yeah.
We're going to have one in the fall, and then probably another two next year. We there's no set schedule where we have to have one a year
Right.
or two a
Right.
year or none. We've gone. I mean, this is the 10th induction ceremony in 33 years. So.
Right.
Jack, what can you tell us about Hannah Dustin? She's a colonial heroine?
Well, she could be controversial. There's been a lot of books about her. Of course, most people are familiar with her, the statue in GAR Park that was the second statue. Some people always say it's the first statue to a woman in the United States, but the first one was actually for her on the island in the Merrimack River just above Concord, New Hampshire, where she made her escape. She was captured in an Indian attack in March of 1697. She lived. There's some controversy, a little bit of a question of where she actually lived, but it was somewhere in the Hilldale Ave area. Her Garrison House, the Garrison House that's on Hilldale
Yeah.
Ave across from the Garrison Golf Course, was being built by her husband when the attack came, but I think they lived around Eudora Street and 495 area, just on the little riverside of Hilldale Avenue.
Okay,
And they were attacked. She had just given birth. Her and her midwife and her baby were taken captive. Thomas Dustin, the husband, shepherded the rest of the family about a mile overland to a garrison house that was on what they call Pecker's Hill then, Broadway now. It was, I believe the garrison house was somewhere around Pilgrim Road or Altamont Street in that area. It's called the Marsh garrison. So he had to make the choice of staying and trying to protect her wife, or trying to get the rest of the family to safety. So he herded them to safety, while Hannah and the baby and the midwife, her name was Neff, were captured, and the baby, of course, was dispatched pretty quickly. By the legend is that they bashed the head of the baby against a tree because they didn't want to take it. But so they marched her and other captives. There were something like 25 Haverhill people killed in the raid. The raid wasn't just to Hannah Dustin's house.
Right.
It was throughout most of the city. So they had several dozen captives. They marched them, and they had to. Several of the captives that couldn't keep up were killed en route or left to die, and they split them up. They were going to take them to Quebec, and either sell them as slaves or hold them for ransom. They were split up to different Indian groups, and the group that Hannah was with, they camped on an island, where the statue is now, and she. Well, there's no putting a sugarcoating it.
Right.
She killed them while they slept. She and there was another a teenage boy from the Worcester area named Leonardson, who was also part of this group, and Neff and the Leonardson boy killed the Indians, and then they went back and Hannah scalped them because there was a bounty on the scalps.
Yeah, the story I remember. Yeah,
and they were mostly, there were two adult males, several women, and the rest were children. So two escaped. So there was always the fear of capture. They had to come down the Merrimack River in late March with flood season. They took a canoe. They destroyed the rest of the canoe so they couldn't be immediately pursued, and they eventually made their way to Haverhill, to what was known as Hannah Dustin Landing Park up on off of River Street,
Right.
there in the Bradley Brook area.
right.
So
Interesting stuff. I'll tell you, it's really. Now, have you ever thought about lecturing or teaching this, or where did you? I know you studied by, I'm sure, maybe in special collections and different things at the library. But I remember when I was in, I think it was like 7th or 8th grade, we had a history course on Haverhill. There was a book that I remember. It had a GBC binding, the plastic binding. It had a black plastic binding and a blue cover, kind of a medium blue cover. That book was so interesting and fascinating to me that I wish I had a copy of it today. Did you ever see that book?
I think so. It was done by one of the teachers.
I think so, yeah.
I think I have a copy of
Yeah.
it. It may still be available at the French shop. I'm not sure.
I'm going to go in and check, because that is you got me going now on Haverhill
I mean,
history.
that's key. I mean, the kids learned about Washington
Yeah.
and Lincoln, but bringing it right home. And the thing, Jack, is if you talk about these certain people and you can mention where they grew up, and it might happen to be the same neighborhood as a kid that's listening in class. And I remember when I went to Suffolk University, and they talked about Governor Winthrop. And they said he grew up about 6 doors down from where you're sitting right now, and I thought that was really neat.
It can be aspiring. You can
Yeah.
kind of take people on, as mentors. Not Hannah Dustin, maybe, but the rest of them. Louis B. Mayer, Dr. Leahy. It goes on and on. That you could maybe get a kid interested in somebody so that they want to maybe follow in similar footsteps. It's be a great thing to have happen. So anyway, I do want to get back to why you're here, especially today, because you're having an induction ceremony for the Haverhill Hall of Fame. It will be on Saturday, June 9th. That's this Saturday, 2 p.m. at the First Church of Christ in Bradford, right at Bradford Common. It's the big white church. It's open to the public, free of charge. If you want to make a donation, you could probably do that, right? Do you guys do you take donations to help with your plaques or anything, or just come and enjoy the ceremony?
We haven't been deluged.
Okay. You're not making a lot of money on the donation page.
I don't think we'll refuse any reasonable.
But I think what you're doing for Haverhill is a great thing. So
thank you.
Yeah.
It is a good thing.
Yeah,
it is excellent.
And do you want to add anything else? And we have a little bit of time left, and we could even take a call if somebody wanted to dial in real quick at 978-374-1900. But it is just so fascinating, the amount of diverse people that have come from Haverhill.
I just want to add why we're having it. All the previous ceremonies have either been at the library or in the Citizen Center. And we're having it at the church because of its connection to the missionary movement. There's a big granite monument on the Bradford Common that marks the location. The earlier church versions of the white church were the first ones were on Salem Street at the old cemetery burial ground, but the later versions were on the common itself, and that monument marks the formation. When we talked about Adoniram Judson, Samuel Newell, and the other missionaries from Salem, in 1810 all the congregational ministers of the Massachusetts area were meeting at the Bradford Church, and they petitioned them to form a foreign missionary society. So, their request was granted. And in 1910, on the 100th anniversary, they formed the American Board of Commissioners of Foreign Missions. In 1910, on the 100th anniversary, that monument was installed. So we are having it because of its church, because of its connection.
Yeah.
So we're going, we're going off-site for a reason.
Okay, and it's Harriet Atwood Newell who's going to be inducted this Saturday at the Bradford. We call it the White Church, but it's technically the First Church of Christ in Bradford Common. 2 o'clock this Saturday. Jack Lynch, I want to thank you very much for taking your time to come in and sit with us here on the new open mic.
Thank you for having me.
And it's time for us to take a short top-of-the-hour break. And I have to run off to a budget session, but Bill Ellis will be in command here for our next hour and our next guest, Lori Trahan, who is running for Congress for the 3rd District, looking for as we affectionately call it, the Nikki Songus seat, right here on the new open mic on WHAV 97.9 FM.
Open mic.
Bill Masek and the new open mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900. If you're enjoying this program, consider becoming a WHAV member right now. Just click on the membership tab at whav.net.
It's 7:01.
WHAV LP Haverhill.
Here's what's happening in local news. A handcuffed Eddie Almonte appeared in Haverhill District Court today to answer to murder charges brought 2 weeks after the death of 20-year-old Nike Colon. Clad in a white T-shirt with his hair pulled back in a ponytail, Almonte appeared before Judge Stephen Abney, who ordered him held without bail on murder charges. Almonte, who requested the services of a Spanish-language interpreter during the 15-minute hearing, was represented Monday by Boston-based defense attorney Eduardo Masferrer. Haverhill police officer Sean Charnock was among the several state police and local law enforcement present for the heavily guarded session. Charnock sat in the front row of the gallery to comfort Miss Shirley Geronimo, the mother of Almonte's alleged murder victim. Geronimo shifted nervously in her seat as Almonte was charged and sobbed softly while Assistant District Attorney Michael Delaney recounted the night of her son's death. According to Delaney, exterior video surveillance footage from Riley's Corner Market led police to finger Almonte as the triggerman in Colin's drive-by shooting. Delaney recounted how on May 17th, a black 2008 Honda SUV, registered and allegedly driven by Almonte, pulled up next to a white GMC pickup truck carrying a Colon unknown and fired at least 4 shots just after 5 p.m. As the white truck leaves, Mr. Colon can be seen in the passenger side with his head slowly falling out of the window, Delaney said, adding that a witness also identified Almonte as the driver. Mas Ferrer declined to elaborate to WHAV on the specifics surrounding the 2016 gun crimes against Almonte that were dropped when the witnesses failed to cooperate, but said his client looks forward to his day in court.
And Mr. Almonte is nervous, as you can imagine. There's a serious charge against him, and he's anxious to look at the government's evidence and try to figure out the best ways to proclaim his innocence.
A probable cause hearing is scheduled for Friday, July 13th. For the rest of today's news, here is Eric Scott.
Haverhill's 2019 fiscal year continues to take shape this week as several key city agencies enter budget conferences at City Hall. Mayor Fiorentini's proposed $194.5 million budget, which increases spending by $7.2 million, mostly for public schools, received a largely positive reaction after it was unveiled May 18th. In addition to more money for schools, Fiorentini earmarked funds to hire a police lieutenant in what he calls a new approach to fighting gang-related crime that has beset the city. City Council President John Michelson, who voted against all versions of the mayor's budget last year because they did not include enough new police officers, told WHAV he likes the hiring of a police lieutenant to manage a partnership with Lowell-based UTEC to address gang violence. It's linked to many of the shootings this past couple of years. I'm hoping to bolster public safety more during the budget review process, Mitchison told WHAV. All budget conference meetings are open to the public and begin at 7 p.m. in the City Council office, room 204, 4 Summer Street. Among the key meetings outlined in more detail at WHAV.net include police and emergency management on Monday, public works on Wednesday, and Haverhill Public Schools next Tuesday, June 12th. A final review is expected June 18th. 10 former Haverhill High School athletes and coaches are among the second group of inductees set to be included in the school's Athletic Hall of Fame during a ceremony Saturday the 9th at Bradford Country Club. Community members and Hilly alumni are invited to celebrate 2018's inductees during dinner starting at 5 p.m. Tickets are $50 and may be purchased by visiting the Haverhill High Athletics website at haverhill-ps.org. Dante Gobi from the class of 44 will be honored with the Brown and Gold Lifetime Achievement Award. The full list of honorees is available at whav.net. Remember, WHAV is the only Haverhill-based news source. There's always more at whav.net. From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, I'm Eric Scott.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Rebecca Foster. A volcanic eruption in Guatemala has killed over 24 people, with the figure expected to rise. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled in favor of a Colorado baker who refused to make a wedding cake for a gay couple. And the standoff between the U.S. and China over trade is continuing after talks stalled in Beijing over the weekend.
Wave weather.
Here's the wave weather forecast for Haverhill and the Merrimack Valley. For tonight, mostly cloudy with a chance of scattered showers. Fog is possible, low 48, light north winds. Tuesday, increasing cloudiness with a chance of scattered afternoon showers and isolated thunderstorms. High 67, low 48. And the outlook for Wednesday, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon. High 64, low around 50. I'm WHAV meteorologist Jim Vaughn. Your next wave weather in 30 minutes.
For more in-depth coverage of the news, visit WHAV's website at whav.net.
WHAV, Merrimack Valley, open mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, 97.9 WHAV FM presents the new Open Mic Show with Bill Masek. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900.
And we're back here in the Open Mic Show here in WHAV 97.9 FM, where if you want to give us a call, it's 978-374-1900. We're on Channel 22, Public Access Channel 22 on the HC Media. If you want to catch us on WHAV.net, you can listen or you can watch there. And also we are on Facebook. Just a couple of things to talk about before we get to our next guest. If you have a birthday or an anniversary that it's somebody celebrating in the month of July, we're giving away a cake. At the last show on the month of June, on the Monday show, we will give away that cake. There will be a drawing, and the cake is to LBD's Restaurant, second-generation Italian restaurant, or bakery, I should say. And we've had a lot of people that have won the cake and have called us back and said it is absolutely delicious. So LBD's second-generation Italian bakery. If you want to partake in the contest, we'll have an opportunity the last day of the month to pull out a name, and hopefully it will be yours, somebody celebrating a birthday or an anniversary. Also coming up on June 10th, we have tickets to the Haverhill Police All-Stars versus the All-Pro Patriots Celebrity Softball Team. And that's coming up on Haverhill Stadium, Sunday, 1 p.m. If you want to have a chance to win, we have 6 tickets. So give us a call, and I will be more than happy to give you those tickets, and hopefully it will be a nice day, and you'll get to see some of the finest in Haverhill and the police department, and they'll be battling the people from the Patriots, the celebrity softball team. Well, with me is Lori Trahan. She is running for the 3rd congressional seat, Nikki Songas's seat currently, and it's going to be changing over in November. Mm-hmm. And Lori, welcome to the Open Mic Show.
Thank you, Bill.
Now, you have a lot of people that are running for this particular seat. We'll say, we said contestants earlier like that, but let's say combatants. It sounds more of a war that will be taking place. Lori, tell us about yourself, your experience, and why the voters of the 3rd Congressional District should basically pull the lever for Lori on September 4th.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show, too. It's a great opportunity to talk to the people of Haverhill. So my name is Lori Trahan. I was born and raised in Lowell, went to Lowell Public Schools, graduated from Lowell High School. I'm a lifelong resident of this district, and that matters because the needs here are unique. I grew up in a union household. My dad was a union iron worker, son of Portuguese immigrants. My mom was a domestic worker while raising my 3 sisters and me. And, you know, it's at the heart of why I'm running, you know, to work hard and be a voice for families like the one I grew up in Lowell. You know, there are too many families who are living paycheck to paycheck, and they rely on good public schools, affordable college education, affordable health care, and a good paying job to achieve their dreams. That's what this campaign is all about, giving access to every family in this district to their own dream.
So I'm watching TV in November.
Yeah.
And it comes up that Lori has beaten her Republican opponent.
Yeah.
And off to Washington you go. What's the first thing you want to do when you get there?
You know, that is the hardest question because there is so much wrong right now in Washington. I mean, there's a gutted State Department, just an EPA that has been is just a shell of what it once was. I'd like to cart Betsy DeVos right out of the Department of Education, and I could go on and on. You know, certainly there's a couple things. One is, you know, it's hard. It would be hard to go down to Washington and not heed the call of the surviving students of Parkland and so many other school shootings that we've had to endure in the last 10 years. I mean, this notion that we can't have bipartisan support and find common ground for some common sense gun reform is probably the most frustrating thing about this Congress. The NRA has the Republican leadership in a stranglehold, and one of the outcomes I'm hoping for is that we have new leadership, many new people heading down to Washington with clear minds to tackle this problem. But I will say, you know, longer term, for me, I'm a product of public schools education put me on the path that I'm on today. And when I think about this income inequality gap and how do you make the lives and the dreams better for so many people across this district who are struggling, it is education. And that's not just an affordable college education, but it's opening up more lanes of education in our public schools, exposure to vocations and trades and apprenticeships and community college programs that put a credential in a student's hand without the burden of debt. I really do feel like we have to make those lanes more accessible to our students at an earlier age so that they can opt in. And I also think we have to make them more noble. You know, college was the right path for me, and I was lucky. I actually got a scholarship to play Division I volleyball at Georgetown.
Geez, I'd be surprised with your height that you'd be playing volleyball. How tall are you?
I'm 6 feet tall.
So you may be the tallest candidate.
I am the tallest candidate.
Yeah. Well, you're in good company. Abraham Lincoln was the tallest president.
Yeah, no, it's served me well, and you know, it definitely put me through college, a college that my family couldn't afford, but you know what? My husband had a very, very different path, right? He went to the Greater Lowell Community, the Greater Lowell Technical School in Lowell, and he has a very successful career as a home builder. And I think that's what it's all about, right? Finding your lane, finding your fit, and then you know, make it easier for students to opt into those lanes so that they can join the workforce. There's, you know, plenty of jobs today for, you know, right here in our communities, and those small businesses are the growth engine of our communities. And so I am watching. I've got 3 stepsons. They're 24, 21, and 18, and I've been through the college process now 3 times, and you know, it's
three votes. I know you're getting right there.
And it's daunting, right? It's daunting to think about college tuition, and you know, the reality is that too many of that of their generation are swamped with debt, with no prospect of finding a job or a wage that is going to get them out from underneath that debt. So
I can understand what you're talking about with the college education, and they get out of school and $140,000, you know, in the red, and if they don't land themselves a good job, you know, they're sitting behind the 8 ball for many years to come. And talking about, you know, public education, the one thing that bothers me is whenever I hear a teacher has to reach into her own pocket to pay for supplies.
No.
That's insane. And I always had the thought that if local businesses wanted to take that on and maybe adopt a class or adopt a school and say, look, if it's going to cost $7,000 for pencils and paper and so forth to help fill the gap, you know, we'll do that.
Or we could just fund our public schools. I mean, I've been a long time advocate for, you know, protecting our public schools, giving the supplies and the tools that our teachers need to teach our students, and that's changed over the years. I mean, there are too many. I think there are too many battles that we're fighting, whether it's privatizing schools or vouchers or lifting the cap on charters. And we can't do anything that will siphon funds away from our public education system, because now more than ever we need to invest in early education, you know, K through 12. So many of our cities and towns need these wraparound programs so that our students have the services that they need in the schools. And frankly, our school buildings are in disrepair. And
right, and the foundation too. I mean, we'll get on the opioid problem that we have, and I think a lot of it may be able to be circumvented at a young age through education in the schools. Well, Lori, we have a call on the line.
Oh.
And Chris, is the caller on the line? Hello, caller. How are you this evening?
Hi. Thank you for connecting me. I'm well. How are you?
Very good, thank you. You have a question for Lori?
I do. Lori, what's it like running for Congress while raising young children?
Sounds like she has future aspirations for politics.
Oh, well, don't let anything get in the way of those aspirations. We need more women running and more women serving, certainly not less. Look, it's as challenging as any woman who's working and trying to balance a family and a career and friends and volunteer activities. I mean, it's I long ago learned how to put an infrastructure in place where, so I've got 2 young girls. They're
What ages?
They're 8 and 4, and
Wow.
they're. But the last 6 years, I had a pretty demanding consulting practice where I traveled all over the world, and I'm lucky. I've got a nice village of family around me to help me with my girls. They're cared for by people who love them. I've got a very supportive husband, and I think my advice to women who are embarking, whether it's a career or a run or just working, is you have to embrace trade-offs, right? I mean, I think I learned early on that you can't be great at everything, and you have to be willing to say no to a lot of things, as hard as it is. But for me right now, in this moment in time, I'm going to sink everything I can into this run and into this job and into representing, hopefully, the 3rd District in Washington, and being a good mom, right? And you know what? I might not be a terrific friend right now, but they understand. My siblings are sort of helping me with my parents, and they understand. And those trade-offs change as your life changes. But not being great, not trying to be great at everything, only leads to exhausted mediocrity.
I guess. Caller, stay on the line. We have to take a short break, and we will be back here in the Open Mic Show on WHAV 97.9 FM.
Open Mic!
Bill Masek and the new Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900. If you're enjoying this program, consider becoming a WHAV member right now. Just click on the membership tab at WHAV.net.
For more in-depth coverage of the news, visit WHAV's website at WHAV.net.
Catch the wave!
Would it surprise you to know radio still reaches more than 90% of people in every age group every week? It's a fact. And 97.9 WHAV FM's target audience averages 92%. While other media are cutting back, area residents turn to WHAV for local news, information, and entertainment they cannot find elsewhere. Add what has been called the halo effect of public radio, and listeners find business messages more credible and trustworthy than other forms of advertising. For a no-obligation assessment about how WHAV can help your business reach more people than all other local media combined, call 978-374-1900 or visit WHAV.net.
Community Spotlight.
Haverhill's Recreation Department is now accepting registrations for summer tennis and soccer lessons. David Reed offers tennis lessons for all ages and abilities starting July 2nd. Sessions are limited to 20 people and fees range from $40 to $65. Coached by Haverhill High's Fred and Bill Tarbox, a week-long soccer camp for girls is $125, with sessions held from 5 to 7:30 p.m. from August 6th through the 9th. To sign up, visit haverhillrec.com. Someone you know is on WHAV. To submit or read your own nonprofit announcements, click on the Contact tab at WHAV.net or email news@WHAV.net. In the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, this is Eric Scott.
Open Mic!
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, 97.9 WHAV FM presents the new Open Mic Show with Bill Masek. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900.
And we're back on the Open Mic Show here on WHAV 97.9 FM. We do have a caller on the line. And caller, are you still there? I think she's gone.
Oh.
Well, we were talking about the swamp, about in Washington, D.C., and
how this president made it worse.
Well, I'm a conservative, so I'm not going to agree with you on that. But you mentioned about common ground.
Yeah.
And if you remember in the Reagan administration, whenever there was differences, Tip O'Neill and Ronnie Reagan would sit in the Oval Office and they would bend an elbow and try to straighten things out.
Yeah.
Anytime you see that today, when you see Schumer or Pelosi, they always come back with some, what I think is asinine comment about the president. You know, it's, if you think that Donald Trump is wrong, he can't be wrong all the time. You know, they say even a blind squirrel will get a nut once in a while.
Yeah.
What I think is I think the Democratic Party right now has no vision. I don't think if you ask them today, where would they like to be 3 years, 5 years down the road? All they talk about is, we want to get rid of Donald Trump. We want to impeach Donald Trump, but there's no grounds to impeach him.
Yeah.
We have this collusion thing that's been going on since a year now. We celebrate the anniversary. Knowing what comes out of Washington, if there was anything there, you know it would have been leaked out by now. And it's my thoughts that this investigation is going to try to take place right in through the midterms, because they're looking to be able to kind of discourage people, saying, well, the Republicans, they're crooks, the collusion and so forth. And what's happening is, in polls, and if you really want to believe any of the polls, I mean, if you believe that Hillary was going to win for president when she was up, and then, November 8th came about. But it seems to be turning. The tide is turning. Trump's approval rating is going up. You see that the gap that has been closed, and actually I saw one poll that said Republicans are actually up by 1 point as far as the so-called blue wave that's usually takes place in a midterm. So how do you get the parties to come back together? I mean, you have to sit down, you have to take the gloves off, because you and I may battle back and forth, but we're representing millions of people that rely on us.
You bet.
How do you do that?
So I don't even know where to begin, but I'm going to start with this, because you're right. I think right now what voters are sick of is the gridlock, right? I mean, I don't think that there's any institution that has a lower approval rating right now, unfortunately, than this Congress, right? And it's just like, look, when Congress doesn't work, working class families like the one I grew up in, they're disproportionately harmed, because, they need Congress to make sure our health care is affordable, that, our public education is well funded and high quality. I mean, that is, that is the horrible outcome of a Congress that doesn't work. I didn't mention it in the beginning, but I worked for 10 years in this congressional office. I worked from Congressman Marty Meehan at the time, both in his D.C. office and up here in the district, and eventually becoming his chief of staff. And there were times when we had to work with Republicans, right? I mean, we had to find common ground. We passed landmark legislation, campaign finance reform, the most significant legislation that took the corruptive influence out of money, that was passed in a generation. And that's what the country wants. The country wants sensible Democrats working with sensible Republicans to solve problems and to get things done. And so I am hopeful. I am hopeful about this election. I see a lot of people coming off the sidelines. I see a lot of people wanting to, right-size the change, not just of Washington, but also of our two parties. And so that's what gives me hope that, fresh new leaders, a fresh new breed of leaders are going to descend on Washington. And when you have a critical mass of new people all going to Washington at the same time, I think that's when you can tackle some of the bigger problems that are confronting our democracy. And there is no shortage of structural impediments to our democracy. I mean, whether we're talking about money in politics, whether we're talking about a system of government that protects incumbents and keeps politicians there for life with all of its protections. Whether you're talking about something simple like Hassett's rule, which at a stroke of a pen, the Speaker of the House can kill an open debate on the floor of the People's House on immigration or on gun reform. Those are the types of things that breeds cynicism in our electorate, and I'm hopeful that we can change.
How about term limits?
There's no faster way to get rid of some of the insidious behaviors in Congress than term limits. And so, the thing I learned is that only works when it's enacted, when everybody adopts it, right? And so, but this is the moment, right? If we're ever going to have movement on term limits, and I'm not exactly sure what that looks like. I'm not sure if it's 2 terms or 3 terms or 4 terms, but having a fresh crop of people constantly go down and not having, people who are career politicians or there for life. I think that's a good thing. I think that takes out a lot of the the problems that you have in a system like we've created today.
I think you need the term limits. I mean, the forefathers in this country, they didn't go on forever and ever.
No.
Because a lot of them, or probably most of them, or not all of them, had other lives.
Yeah.
They weren't, politicians first.
Right.
They were either farmers or they were in, some sort of a business. And so they had to get back and tend to what they had.
Yeah.
We take a look at John Adams. His wife tended to the farm.
Yeah.
And then he had to, come back. I mean, he lost his presidency because of Thomas Jefferson and the negative things that he had published about him. I don't know if you know the story and so forth. But
watch the series.
Yeah, Thomas Jefferson was a backstabber. But they went back to live regular lives. Yeah. And I think you have to have term limits because when you get in too much power, and I think that it's not good because, as you had mentioned about the fresh faces that appear, and I think you probably would not have as much dissension between the two parties in Washington right now if you had various different faces. Because one of the things that is terrible is when a person takes a position, they stick with it. If they make a change, they're accused of flip-flopping. Well, Abraham Lincoln was accused of that one time. You changed the position, why? And he came back with a great answer. I would like to think I'm more intelligent today than the original day when I had mentioned it.
Yeah.
Which is true.
Yeah, no.
Because you make a comment today, you're pigeonholed. You change from that, and then your competition comes on and says, well, she says this one day, she says that the other day.
It's a great comment. Like, look, if I'm done learning, I'm doomed, right? I mean, that's, and I think that's a great quote.
My favorite Lincoln quote, though, is somebody accused him of being two-faced. And he said, if I was two-faced, would I be wearing this one today? Yeah, that's my favorite. Lincoln was great for full of stuff like that. But we'll get back to you, Lori. So you get down to Washington, D.C. You have some familiarity with it already because you've already been down there.
Yes.
If the Democrats don't win back the House, do you feel that you could still have some sort of an impact to try to bring the parties together?
Yeah, I think two things are, I think, at play here that are that give me a lot of optimism. One is I do think this is going to be one of those elections. It's already shaping up to be, one that you get maybe once in your lifetime, and there will be new leadership and a lot of career politicians going home, and that's good for the work of Congress and sort of breaking some of the traditional stalemates. And I also think it's good for our party, right? I mean, our party's at an inflection point. There's no question. I'm interested in helping our party transition to the future. I mean, we've got a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of work to do to get ready for 2020. And the one thing that I am hopeful for is that, no matter what, whether the Democrats take back the House, and I do believe they will.
You want to put money on it?
We could do that.
Cup of coffee.
Sure.
Yeah.
But even if they don't, I am hoping for a return, to sensibility because, look, when you grow up in a city like Lowell, and that, where I did, I mean, I got to see the late Senator Paul Tsongas, someone who understood full well that you can't be you can't be pro-employment and anti-business at the same time.
Right.
Also understood, how do you roll up your sleeves and help the communities that you're actually there to serve? How do you use the power of your office to bring economic development and urban revitalization to your cities and towns? And that is a breed of leadership that this district likes, right? We've got a history of sending a progressive Democrat down to Washington who's focused on creating jobs and bringing, public funding back to the district to be used to leverage, private investment. And so I'm hopeful not just for a different landscape in Washington, but also being, carrying on the rich tradition of, Congresswoman Tsongas, Congressman Meehan, the late Senator Paul Tsongas, going all the way back to, even someone who I'm sure you admire, Edith Morse Rogers.
Yes. We're going to take a short break. We're going to take a call.
Okay.
And think about what I'm going to be asking you. We're
What
going
is
to
it?
give you the opportunity to speak to Donald Trump. I'll play Donald Trump, and you come into the Oval Office and say, Mr. President, this is what I want to talk to you about. How are we going to work this out? We're going to take a short break here on WHAV 97.9 FM. Our numbers.
It's 7:32.
Stay informed each day with local news coupled with FSN's worldwide coverage. 97.9 WHAV is the only Haverhill-based news source. There's always more at WHAV.net.
Catch the wave.
Melinda's Garden Moments help gardeners create and maintain a healthy, beautiful garden with ease, inside or out and all year long. This is Melinda Myers, inviting you to tune in every weekday morning right here on WHAV. You'll learn creative ways to grow your own vegetables and herbs while beautifying your landscape. Eco-friendly lawn care, flower garden design basics, unique container gardens, attracting birds and butterflies to the landscape, and much more. Again, please join me weekday mornings for Melinda's Garden Moment for a very environmentally friendly approach to gardening. Remember, only local radio can bring you this feature opportunity, but only WHAV does.
Wave weather.
Here's the wave weather forecast for Haverhill and the Merrimack Valley. For tonight, mostly cloudy with a chance of scattered showers. Fog is possible, low 48, light north winds. Tuesday, increasing cloudiness with a chance of scattered afternoon showers and isolated thunderstorms. High 67, low 48. And the outlook for Wednesday, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon. High 64, low around 50. I'm WHAV meteorologist Jim Vaughn. Your next wave weather in 30 minutes.
WHAV Open Mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, 97.9 WHAV FM presents the new Open Mic Show with Bill Masek. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900.
And this is the Open Mic Show here on WHAV 97.9 FM. Bill Masek had to leave, and he gave me the opportunity to sit in the big seat tonight. And we have Lori Trahan here in the studio, and we have a caller on the line. And let's have the caller. Caller, how are you this evening?
I'm doing just fine. How you doing?
Very good, thank you. You have a little bit of an accent, it sounds like.
No, I don't. No, do I?
Oh, it sounded like a little bit of a southern twang.
No, not at all. Not hardly.
Well, okay.
Just wanted New England born and raised.
Oh, same here.
I just wanted to ask Ms. Trahan, you mentioned term limits.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to give you my reasoning why I'm opposed to term limits to a degree, per se. Because if you had one term limit, then you'd be sending 435 rookies to the Hill who wouldn't have a clue as to what's going on. If you restricted them to 2 terms, you'd elect probably half would be newbies, and the other half would be lame ducks with nothing to lose. So when you say term limits for congressmen, what do you recommend? 2 terms, 4 terms, 5? Where do you set the term limit?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, to be honest, I haven't really thought so much through the design of what term limits, would look like. I'm not sure if it's a, 4-year term and you get 2 or 3. So I'm not sure what the perfect, I'm not sure,
You have to rewrite the Constitution.
Yeah, look, I don't even know what the likelihood of Congress, sort of enacting term limits. I think the question was, would you be for those? And I think, look, the thing I would want to state is that I don't intend to go down to Washington and make a career out of it. And I think one of the easiest ways for us to, send a signal that, we're, I'm not going down to be a career politician, and I do want to work and be only beholden to the people whom I'm there to serve, and not for myself or any special interest. Is to think through how that might look, and if it's a system that would actually be, viable. I mean, certainly right now we think about the system as we know it, but the reality is there's a lot of people there down in Congress with a lot of institutional memory on the committee staff, resources such as CRS and so many things that you're surrounded with that I think it could handle the turnover, especially if it was staggered. But like I said, I'd have to think through, with people who have probably thought about it much longer than I on how that would actually look.
Okay, because that's one thing I'm rather afraid of, is everybody says term limits, term limits. Okay, Congress 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, how many years? And they say the same answer to you. Well, gee, I don't know. And
yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Before term limits, I could see the Senate limit of 3. I could see the House limit of 5, and then you could free to run for the Senate. The only thing is that you might have somebody run as a Lurleen Wallace type of candidate running, and then the incumbent is the former congressman is calling the shots. So I can see a lot of as what happens with term limits in the South, where the governors can't succeed themselves, but they find somebody to do it that'll follow their lead. So this is what I'm kind of afraid of.
Yeah, and to be honest, I'm really interested in ending the tradition of you have to be there for 4, 6, 8 years in some cases to have the clout to get anything done, right? I mean, I've spent the last 13 years in the private sector, and I was never, my performance was never based on how long I sat in my seat, but rather, what I did, right? If I produced quarter after quarter. And the closer we can get to a system like that, I think the better. There's a lack of accountability today.
A grading system for politicians?
Look.
Well, there is a grading system for politicians.
I know, it's called a vote.
Yes,
yeah.
it is.
I saw a sign the other day. You can't fix stupid, but you sure can vote it out.
Right. But something we were talking about, caller, before we were on the air, about candidates that have a last name that no matter what they do, short of murder, they'll always seem to get elected, like the Kennedy name. They've done very well in the state of Massachusetts, and there are other political names, like Roosevelt and so forth. So, but, as far as the term limits, and I'm not going to take away from Lori's time, maybe if there was one established, instead of just 435 new Congress people going in 1 year, set up a staggered program.
Yeah, exactly. I think so. And
yeah, but then you're stuck with a guy for 4 years.
Well, but the thing is, 4 years is very minute to the history of this country, how many years we've been here. So basically, you're planting today for the future.
Well, you could be, yeah. I don't know how you would stagger Congress's. I mean, they do it in the Senate now. The Senate is staggered.
Right. Well, we could set up. This is America. This is the greatest country in the world, and we can get through anything. Well, caller, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate the call. Lori appreciates the call.
Yes, thank you so much.
Lori, I mentioned you get a phone call one day. This is the Donald, and then you turn around and say, "Is this my husband playing a joke on me?" And say,
Sounds
"No,
like
this
one
is
he would play."
No, so, this is Donald Trump. Come on in. I want to talk to you about your ideas and what you can do to persuade me to be different. What would the first thing that you would
So if we're going to talk about the
you talked about the economy.
Yeah.
So he calls you in and you want to talk about the economy.
Yeah.
What do you say to him?
I think that I stress what I know, and that's the fact that working class families are not feeling the benefits of this economy. And
then he tells you about the tax cut.
Yeah, and we have a long conversation about that. How the breaks that he gave to working class families were temporary, and that the.
But let me ask you a question. I know they say they're temporary. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And that the biggest breaks were given to the top 1% and to the largest corporations, and so
And those corporations do employ people.
Absolutely, absolutely. I just don't. This is what I know to be true, that our economy is strongest when everyone is paying their fair share. And so I do believe that we need to have a more balanced tax reform package.
Has that ever happened, though? Has there ever been a period of time in the U.S. history where everybody paid their fair share?
Well, I guess we're not going to go back to the 1960s when the income inequality gap was at its, most narrow. And, the tax rate was significantly higher than anything we even saw in the Clinton administration. But look, we have to get back to a system where, we're taxing the wealthiest Americans at a rate that they that is fair. And it's not we shouldn't be giving tax cuts to the wealthy while the benefits that we're giving to working class families who are already struggling with the cost of living. Are fleeting. That's just outrageous to me. And so, is that what my phone call is to President Trump?
No phone call. You're in the Oval Office.
I'm in the Oval Office.
Yes.
So I'm in front of him. But look, I think we have to have an honest discussion about the economy and how our economy has changed, right? It's and we have to just not. We have to get rid of the blame, and we just have to accept reality. Our economy's changed. What are the jobs that we're actually going to attract and retain in our country? And how do you reverse engineer an educational system that feeds into that economy? The reality is there are a lot of programs that we can be using in our community colleges, whether it's workforce training and retraining our employees for jobs that are going to stay in this country, or it's cybersecurity and data jobs that kids don't need to go to a 4-year liberal arts, private institution to get that job. Those are good paying jobs. And I do think that it's time for, industry and government and our labor unions to work in concert to think about what those programs are going to be. I mean, we've got so many people investing in apprenticeships, whether, it's trade associations or labor unions, and we've got, if you go to a vocational school now, it's completely changed from what we've seen. We don't bring those programs into our public schools so that we give kids options about what kind of job, what kind of life they want to have down the road. And I just think there's a way to think about this holistically, right? We've got an economy, it's changed, the jobs have changed. What does that mean? What does that mean for our education? And I think that that's something that there would be a lot of bipartisan support for. I think we could find common ground, Democrats and Republicans working together with unions rather than this, union busting that's happening across the country. I think we actually give unions the role that they should have in this economy. They provide a tremendous service to working class families, and they're already proactively creating these apprenticeship programs and training people for jobs that are in demand. So, I think the president can use the power of his office to fund infrastructure so that we get hard hat jobs back to the district, and in the process we repair our roads and bridges and we, revitalize our communities. I think I'd have a lot to say about opioids. I don't know why we haven't funded the opioid epidemic in this country at the federal level. It's so hard to watch. So many overdose deaths in our community: Haverhill, Lowell, Lawrence. I mean, we need the federal government to step up and not only invest in educational programs to our young people, but also, to treatment and ongoing treatment. We know that this isn't a 3 to 6 month ordeal. This is something where we need to get people back on their feet, into the workforce, reunited with their family, out of the zone where relapse is likely, and we need to do that by committing funds to it. So, I'd have a lot. I think the president might not let me stay in his office for as long as I would like to tell him all the things that I would like him to focus on.
He just might, though. He just might.
But there's and look, the there are a lot of things, whether we're talking about guns, whether we're talking about opioids, whether we're talking about education, whether we're talking about job creation, whether we're talking about, trade. I think that there is common ground that Democrats can find with Republicans, and I don't just say that everything that's wrong or everything that I'm against. I'm a very productive person. I'm looking forward to going down and solving some problems and building and finding those coalitions. That's when it works best.
Well, there is a commonality between the Democrats and the Republicans, and you know what it is?
I feel a joke coming.
No, they're Americans.
They are.
That's it.
We are.
We are in America, and this is the greatest country in the world, and maybe in the universe, too. We'll never know. If we have a space program coming up, maybe we'll be back up there. Well, you're on the Open Line Show, here on the Open Mic Show here on WHAV 97.9 FM. We have to take a short break. If you have a call for Lori Trahan, our number is 978-374-1900.
Open Mic!
Bill Masek and the new Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900. If you're enjoying this program, consider becoming a WHAV member right now. Just click on the membership tab at WHAV.net.
97.9 FM, WHAV.
Catch the wave!
Now, here's good news for you Gildersleeve fans.
Yes, folks, this is Gildersleeve. This summer, whether you're at the beach, the mountains, or right in your own backyard, you'll be able to hear us every Wednesday night at the usual time. We'll be on the air all summer.
Every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. on WHAV.
Catch the wave, WHAV. Open Mic!
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, 97.9 WHAV FM presents the new Open Mic Show with Bill Masek. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900.
And we're back here on the Open Mic Show here on WHAV 97.9 FM. We're here every Monday night from 6 to 8 p.m. And we want to give the number at 978-374-1900 because you can have two things. You can talk to Lori Trahan, or you can have an opportunity of winning LBD's 7-inch cake. That's the second-generation Italian bakery located right here in Haverhill. If you have an anniversary or a birthday coming up in the month of July, give us a call. It doesn't have to be yourself. It could be a friend, a neighbor, or your wife or your husband or children and so forth, anybody. So call up, and the last Monday night of the month, we will pick out. We do have a hat, a cowboy hat, and it was Hoss Cartwright's old cowboy hat. You remember Hoss Cartwright from Bonanza? You remember them? He had the huge. He remembers. Remember how big that hat was? You could have fit both of our heads into that hat. It was so big. But anyways, we will draw out a name at the last Monday of the month, and you'll have an opportunity to win. And we've had several. We've had Jerry, who's a longtime listener of the show, and Jerry turned 90 years young. He lives in Haverhill on April 15th, which is tax day. So it's a date that you will never forget. As Roosevelt said, it's a day that lives in infamy. And Jerry, he called in and said he enjoyed his cake at Albie D's restaurant, or I keep calling it a restaurant, Albie D's Bakery, which is located right here in Haverhill. 978-374-1900. Lori Trahan, you're back in the Oval Office speaking with Mr. Trump.
Yeah.
What other points would you like to discuss with him? You mentioned infrastructure, and I have to ask you a question. What happened to all the stimulus money from the Obama administration with infrastructure?
Can I get back to my meeting with President Trump? Because, the one thing that
I just asked the question. I'm Trump asking the question. No, go ahead.
There's a lot, right? I mean, I think one thing that is prompting so many women to run for office this year is the lack of representation that we have, certainly, and the assault that we've had to, endure on our hard-fought rights, right? I mean, there's no question that this administration in particular has not been good to women, whether it's our, access to contraception, reproductive health, funding for Planned Parenthood that helps us with our family planning and gives us control over our economic future. But equal pay for equal work. As you know, he has 2 daughters himself, and I just don't understand why he wouldn't be for paid leave, affordable daycare, so that women who want to work, who want to be in the economy, have as much access and get paid, dollar for dollar when it's the same job as a man. And so I think that would be one. I want to know the answer to that question, and 2, I want to fight. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was going to ask you, how come equality in pay hasn't come about yet? There have been a lot of presidents since this subject has been brought up.
Yeah.
If you ever, there was a reporter years ago, Helen Thomas.
Yeah.
And Helen Thomas brought that question up to John F. Kennedy in a press conference. So this goes back into the early 1960s. Here we are, 2018. The subject is still on the table. How come?
Yeah, so one of the things I've done for the last 6 years is I've had the opportunity and the privilege to work with, Fortune 500 companies, large private companies across the country, helping them get more women into leadership roles, more women into boardrooms. And it's a problem. We don't have nearly enough women. And that is part of the prescription, is we need more women in leadership to get these, these policies changed. When I look at the Congress and I only see 19% women, that's a big factor in why I'm running. I've got 2 young daughters, they're 8 and 4, and I want to change that.
I see a dynasty happening here. You to your daughter.
No, but look, one of the things that I'm most proud of is that I am part of a field of candidates. There's 11 people on the ballot. There are 6 men and 5 women. Now, that's never happened in my lifetime, and those optics matter. They matter. I show them to my daughters. I want them to know that women just run as a matter of course, right? It's not something out of the ordinary or one woman run. It's like that's not what this is about. This is feeling more like progress and a meritocracy. And so that is an important step in the right direction. But the reality is there are not enough women serving. And so when we do have conversations about our health care, and there are, you see that infamous picture of a bunch of men sitting around a table, we need more women. We need more women in leadership. But we also need to shift that imbalance in the Congress so that we are a voice at the table. And that's, it's a large part of why I'm running. I want to follow in the footsteps of Congresswoman Tsonga. She did a lot of work for women in the military and women in general, and pounding on the table when our voices needed to be heard. And so that's an important part of this selection. I think we're going to see a lot of women not only running, but also getting elected in many of these districts. And I think it's one of those things where, it's whether you call it the resistance, whether you want to call it, whether you want to shift the balance. I mean, the president is going to have to face a Congress that is much more balanced and with a bunch of women who want to understand why he's not, fighting on our behalf.
Do you think he hates women?
No.
Okay. But he doesn't understand the plight?
I could not possibly imagine what goes through President Trump's head.
Donald's head, yeah.
I think he lacks respect for women. I do. I believe that. I don't think he would say the things that he says. I don't think that he would behave the way he has behaved if he respected women.
Understandable. But, it's something that we've experienced in this country from other politicians also.
Look,
is it right? No, it's not right.
No.
It's wrong.
You got to change the optics across, all industries, all, whether it's government, corporate America. I'm not saying it's just the president. And it's culturally we have a problem in this country. And I think that changes when you change the leadership dynamics and the power dynamics that take place in the workplace. Look, I was the only woman female executive at a high-tech company. I felt those dynamics, firsthand. Mm-hmm. So I understand, and I'm not saying that it's just his problem to solve. But he is in the most important position in the world, and his narrative and the way he talks about women matters. So I'd like him to be.
But has he talked about it since he's been president that way?
You're splitting hairs.
Well, you know, I know what he was like prior to he was in office, but it seems like since he's been in office, he's kind of toned down a lot, and because he has to now. I mean, because he's in, like you said, the most powerful position in the world. And as far as females being involved in politics and being in control, I have the greatest admirations for Maggie Thatcher. She was great, and Golda Meir. You know, from the beginning of Israel. Yeah. These were strong women that took a stance and were very well respected, the countries that they represented. Well, it was nice talking with you, Lori. As I'm Donald Trump, Melania is banging on the door outside, wondering who I'm talking to in here. She doesn't trust me with any women behind closed doors anymore. Lori,
I assure you the door's open.
Oh, God. Whoa, God bless you. Let's see. Maybe he has that. We got 3 minutes left to go. Yeah. Lori, it's been great talking to you tonight.
Thanks, Bill.
We have listeners out there.
Yeah.
Let them know what you would like them to take to the polling booth on Election Day, September 4th.
So I appreciate that. And thank you. Thank you for, I know that you and I probably don't see eye to eye on everything, but you've been a great sport, and this has been a spirited discussion, so I appreciate it.
My lip is bleeding. I've been biting it. No, just kidding.
Thank you. Yeah, look, so I'm running for this seat because I want to be a voice for working class families. You know, when I think about this race and I look at this field of candidates, it's a talented group of question. But there are major differences amongst us. You know, there are a lot of people in this district who are moving in to run, and there are a lot of people who are raising money.
Carpetbaggers.
They're raising money from, people who have no interest in this district, and frankly, special interest, whether that's from, the State House or from Boston City Hall, and that's not what this is about for me. I didn't move into this district to run. I've lived in this district my entire life. This is about me representing the people I grew up with and the families that my children are growing up with. It's one of the reasons why we've raised 60% of our support from people who live here. I want to signal every single day to the people who live in this district and who are going to vote in this election that I am beholden only to them. I don't take special, I'm not being funded by special interests.
So George Soros hasn't contacted you yet?
No, he has not. There has been some talk that, I'm inheriting this political machine from Marty Meehan, and that's just not the case. I mean, part of what you do when you work on a congressional staff for 10 years is you help families, you help people. And if I'm benefiting from anything, it's being a lifelong resident of this district and working hard for families that have had and they've come into our office, and we've set up an office to help them. And I would only ask, that the other candidates raise more money from inside of this district, especially people who are maybe calling out that I'm benefiting from some machine. So, look, I'm excited about this election. I think I've got the experience to hit the ground running. I think I'm the only candidate in this race that has experience down in Washington, specifically on Capitol Hill, to hit the ground running. And I would humbly ask for the voters who are listening tonight for their support on September 4th, for their vote on September 4th.
How many years you plan on staying in Washington? Stay as long as you would like. Because I know that you'll do a good job because you have a good heart. It's obvious speaking to you tonight that you're very intelligent and you have a good heart, and it seems like you want to dedicate your life in Washington, D.C. for the people back here in the 3rd Congressional District. It's easy to say. I just new set of dentures here. 3rd Congressional District. Lori, thank you very much. We're at the top of the hour, and come back and visit us if you want before the election or after the election.
Would love to. Yes.
When you face off against your.
Thanks so much, Bill.
This is WHAV 97.9 FM, the Open Mic Show. Bill Ellis filling in for Bill Masick, and we'll be back on Monday night.
Open Mic!
Join Bill Masick live on the new Open Mic again next Monday night at 6. The opinions expressed on the Open Mic are not necessarily those of 97.9 WHAV FM, its underwriters, or affiliated stations. The Open Mic Show came to you from the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom.